Hello, fellow book readers. My name is John, and today I am going to go over my weekly reading update for the first week of October and like the end of September. So over this past week, I've read 5 books, and I would say this has been one of my weaker weeks of reading in terms of like strength of the books. I haven't done like an average star rating for it, but I would say it's not great. But with that being said, there has been some good parts to it and some low parts, and I just want to kind of talk about it all and give some spoilers. And as always, there will be spoilers when I talk about these books, so keep that in mind. I will list the books that I'm going to talk about down below in order. So the first book that I am going to talk about is the last book I read in September. It's called I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. I gave this book 2 stars. This is more of a novella than a book, I would say. But with that being said, this book has a really interesting concept of these 40 different women trapped underground in this like sort of prison cell, and they don't know why they're there or what's going on. And eventually they are able to escape, but when they escape, they notice that this planet is empty, or this place where they are is empty, and they don't even know if they're on Earth or a different planet. But this book is about 175 pages, so it is short, but it does feel longer than it actually is. That's not to say it's paced poorly, because I do think it's paced fine. It's just that nothing ever happens in this book, because there's nobody on this planet. And again, I talked about this a little bit in my previous video, my monthly wrap-up, so I'm not going to talk about it too much here, but this book is definitely not a fantasy, and it was put in the fantasy section of my library for some reason, so I went into it with definitely misguided expectations, and I do think that affected how I viewed the book in the end. That being said, again, just nothing really happens in this book, and it has some really powerful theming, and I think the concept is really good, so I didn't hate my time here, and it's too short to really hate, but I didn't really love anything that happened in this book so much. I particularly hated the fact that this book is centered around this mystery of why these women are in prison and where they are, and the book doesn't even really give you hints at an answer at the end. There is no answer, and I don't mind that sometimes. Sometimes it's actually a good thing. But usually books that do that, the whole thing isn't the mystery of the book. And here it's the mystery, and usually at least books give you hints so you can kind of make a guess. This book doesn't really give you any hints. So I was left feeling a little bit unsatisfied, I would say. That's why to me this book is just fine or okay. It's 2 stars. It's not 1 star, I hated it, but it is 2 stars, just okay. Okay, and then the next book I read was the first book of what I am deeming Vampire October, was Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. I thought this book was good. I gave it 3 stars. I don't think it's very good or great, but it is good. And I can see why it's a classic, and I would say it's a kind of like a must-read if you're into like vampire books. I can understand why it's considered one of the most popular vampire books in existence. I totally get it. Totally makes sense. I thought the world building here was really good, even though it's, it takes place in our world, but sort of the vampire world building of it. And I think it asks a really good question of what does it mean to be a vampire? What is a vampire's nature? And you kind of get a satisfying answer at the end, sort of. And it's not like spelled out to you, but you do get like a satisfying, the book does answer the question it asks. And it also has one of the craziest climaxes I've read this year. Like, I totally did not expect Claudia to die. It was insane. She was my favorite character in the book. My favorite character can die. That's not the reason I was surprised. I was surprised because the book didn't feel like it was building to that. But looking back on it after, it was like, oh yeah, that does make sense. But in the moment, I was very surprised. I thought the climax was very, very, very strong. I also, like I said, really enjoyed the vampire lore we got in this. I thought some of the character building was really, really solid. Now, my issue with this book is sort of the repetitiveness of the first act. I don't understand why Lewis, our main vampire, didn't leave Lestat. Like, it doesn't really make much sense. It kind of makes sense in the end, but I don't think it was very satisfying the way they went about telling that. This is sort of similar to Bram Stoker's Dracula, where it has like a very repetitive part where Dracula is just biting, I forget the name of the girl, but he's biting this girl over and over again until she dies. Just like repeatedly for like the next, for 50 pages, 50 to 100 pages. It just keeps happening over and over and over again. And it's sort of the same here where our main character, Lewis, is like, I'm leaving you, Lestat, and then he doesn't leave. I'm going to leave you, Lestat, and then he doesn't leave. I'm going to leave you, Lestat. And this happens like 4 or 5 different times. And by the end, it was getting a little bit too repetitive for me, so I didn't love that. I don't think that it went about that in a very satisfying way. That being said, I do think the first act with Lestat is much more interesting than the second act up until the climax. Like, the climax of the second act is great, but the second act also kind of drags a little bit. I just did not care about any of the vampires in Paris, including the main one. Like, that vampire did not interest me at all. But yeah, the climax was very good, and I liked the vampire world building, and I thought the character work was pretty solid for the most part. Like, Lewis was good, Claudia was good, Lestat was pretty interesting. Yeah, there were just some other minor characters thrown in there that were okay. They were fine. But I guess the Paris vampires, they didn't interest me that much. And I thought parts of this book were kind of repetitive. So for me, this is just good, not great. I wouldn't even call it very good. I would just call it good. 3 stars. But again, that's just my opinion. Others might enjoy this more. I also thought the concept of the book, having an interview with the vampire, was really like kind of funny and charming in a way. Okay, then the second book I read for Vampire, the third book of the month, the third book in the... Okay, then the third book of the week and the second book in Vampire October that I read was Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. Obviously, this was the phenom of a book in the late 2000s. Yeah, this book just kind of dominated the shelves. It was like Harry Potter and Twilight. That was what was going on there. This book was just okay for me. It was 2.5 stars. Again, I'm not the target audience for this book, so I didn't... I went into it with lower expectations. Do I think it met those expectations? Parts of it did. Parts of it really kind of bothered me a lot. So my main problem with this book is the climax. So the book is building to this really, really, really strong climax, and I was waiting for it, and I thought it was going to deliver. And our main character, Bella, gets attacked, and she passes out, and then when she wakes up, the vampire's dead. The vampire that was attacking her is dead. It's over. You don't even get to see the climax. There's no action. There's nothing. It's like, I think it felt like Stephanie Meyer was just afraid to write the action scene. That's what it felt like to me, and I didn't love that. I wanted the action scene. The book was building to the action scene. It could have been really, really strong, and it just didn't happen. There was nothing there. She passed out. You didn't get to see it. That really, really bothered me, and that's probably alone what takes the book down from being a good book to just like an okay book for me. It's better than okay. It's like borderline good, but there were parts that I hated just as much as I liked. For me, that's just a 2.5 star book. It's okay, bordering on good. So that part bothered me, and then Bella herself sort of bothered me. Just quite. I liked Edward and all the other characters in his family, and even like Jacob and his like sort of tribe. I thought they were really interesting. I thought the way that they told that vampire story, the way it was introduced with Jacob, was very, very interesting, very good. I loved the way that was done. But Bella herself is just weird as a character. Like, sometimes she feels younger than she is, and other times she feels way older than she is. And I don't think, and don't get me wrong, sometimes that's the way it is with teenagers. So it's sort of realistic, but it did bother me. It felt like too much at times. And also her instant love with Edward didn't really make much sense. But that is very teenager-esque, and I didn't have a problem with it. But reading it as an older person is just like, okay. Whatever. This is lame. But I did get it, and it didn't bother me as much as it would probably bother other people. Now, what did I like about the book? I like I said, I liked the way that the vampire thing was introduced with Jacob. That was a very good way to introduce it. Very, very good. And I did like Edward's family and Edward himself. Those characters were very, very, very strong characters. And I sort of liked the family dynamic that was going on with Bella, too. That was very interesting. And it wasn't like overdone where that like dominated the book, but I did like sort of that subplot going on in the background. I thought that was very interesting too. Oh, one more thing that bothered me a little bit. Bella just accepts that Edward's a vampire like way too fast. Like, it's very unrealistic. Like, very, very unrealistic. I don't understand how she accepted it so fast. It was like, no, he's not. And then she tells him, and he says, yeah, I am. He's like, okay, yeah, you are. It's like, what? No! This is dumb. I thought that should have went on longer, but I do understand that she wanted to keep the pacing of this book a little bit quicker, because this book is paced really, really well. So I do understand why that was the case. I just thought that was a little weird. So yeah, 2.5 stars for me. I think it's probably the best this book could get for me. There were parts, like I said, there were parts of this book I enjoyed, but there were equal, or maybe even just like a tiny bit more parts that I did not like about this book. So 2.5 stars. It's just okay. And then the next book I read was Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. I hated this book. I'm sorry, I just did. Look, I can fully admit that it's not objective. Like, objectively, this book is written very, very, very well. I can fully admit that, but I did not enjoy my time reading it. I found my eyes skimming over lines, just like being bored at different parts. Yeah, I gave this book 1 star. It just didn't work for me. I hated my time here. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you a lot of the reasons why right now. I think this book really struggled with the genre. I knew that it was going to have history. Like, I'm a history major. I love history. I have my bachelor's degree in history. So, don't get me wrong, I love history. But this book couldn't figure out if it was a historical fiction or a horror novel. And those two can blend really well together. You can blend historical fiction with almost any genre, but you have to do it sort of in a way where it actually blends together. And here, I don't think the author got the blend he was looking for, in my opinion. Like, for me, this book felt like we were just pausing different parts to do like these history lessons on Native Americans, which, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed, but I felt the pauses in the narrative to describe this just didn't feel natural. It felt sort of wrong. And the way he got around that was making this like a diary for him. So it's like, okay, yeah, it's diary. So this person would just be writing down stuff like this. I get that. But I didn't love it. I didn't love the way it was done. It didn't seem as seamless as, say, it did in, like, say, The Lions of Alorsan by Guy Gavriel Kay, where he blended history and fantasy really, really, really well. Here, they sort of, I felt, bounced off each other in a lot of different ways. And I didn't like it. Again, there's a lot of good historical nuggets in here that are really fascinating. And there's some great horror in here, too. But to me, those things sort of bounced off each other in ways I didn't love. This book also went over the top with the gore. I'm not a gore person. I actively don't like gore. Blood actually makes me queasy. It doesn't make me queasy to read about it, but I thought here some of the gore was just overdone. Like, way overdone. Like, it didn't need to be that much overdone. like, it was way too detailed, and I get it. It's a horror novel. Some people are looking for that. For me, I felt out of place in a lot of different spots, and I didn't love it. Also, another thing, the third act takes place 100 years after the main act with a different character, and I don't know why that act was included. Like, I get it because he wanted to do this diary form, so that act had to be included, but that act was not interesting, not fun. Didn't love the resolution. I thought the climax of this book, I was actually really, really, really strong in that second act with Good Stab in the church, and the priest is surrounded by all like the dead people Good Stab killed as sort of like revenge. That was so good. That was my favorite part of the book. That part was actually brilliant. I almost gave the book 2 stars for that part alone, but that part wasn't enough to carry it. It wasn't long enough. And then we got this third act with this other 100 years later. And the third act was just so lame and so unnecessary. And I actively did not like the character of Etsy just like at all. Like, I didn't hate her, but like she just felt like nothing and didn't need to be in this story. And I didn't enjoy it. Another thing is the characters. I really liked Good Stab. I didn't love Good Stab. I thought he was an interesting character, though. Sometimes his voice got on my nerves a little bit just because I thought it was overdone. Like, not on my nerves, but like it was difficult to read at times because he always talked a certain way. And it was, just wanted it just like a little bit tweaked so it didn't have so much of that voice because it was just difficult to read. But I get why. It's historical fiction. He's got to talk like that a bit. So I understand. I understand why. Don't get me wrong. I totally get it. It was difficult to read at times. I think it made for a badly paced narrative. But the other character, the father, the priest, hated that character. Awful. I know you're not supposed to feel sympathy for him at all, really, or even like him. But I didn't want to read him. That's how much I hated him. I was just like, this character's awful. Not a good character at all. That being said, I do think the concept of the book is really strong with the massacre that this priest sort of kind of started almost. And Good Stab becoming a vampire and taking his revenge. I thought the concept was really good, but I just don't think it was executed as well as the author intended, at least for me. For me, there was just a lot here that I just didn't latch onto, and this book is quite long and I don't think paced well. So for me, this is a 1-star book. Okay, then last up I read Carmilla by Sheridan Fanu. I don't know if I'm saying that right, and I apologize. This is like the book that inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula. So this was written pre-Dracula in like the mid-1800s. Really, this is a novella. It's only about 100 pages. Really, really strong. It's my favorite book of the week. I gave it 4 stars. I think it's great. And it's really, I love books in the 1800s that are like really easy to read, or even the early 90s that are like still really easy to read. Like, I don't think the prose here, you can definitely tell it's not modern prose, but it's not hard to read at all. It doesn't drag. It doesn't throw these like words at you that are just like, this is lame. I have to pause and take out my dictionary. Like, no, this book is very easy to read. I think the character work here is awesome. The original vampire, so good, so good. The story has a great twist at the end that you're gonna see coming, but it's still executed really well. And I think the characters here, all like the three main characters, both Carmilla, who is the vampire, and the daughter of the sort of account, I would guess you would call them, are very, very strong characters, and you root for kind of both of them, which is really odd because one of them is clearly a vampire. But I love the hints of the vampirism you're getting in this, sort of the backstory, sort of the layers that are built the world that Dracula is built on. I think it's really strong here, done really well. You can see the roots, but this book is very well paced, tells a very good has a very good twist ending, tells a very good story, and the character work here is flawless. I'm not gonna say it's like a perfect book because it's definitely not, but it's great. Like, it's a very good novella. I gave it 4 stars. I think it's great. Yeah, this is my book of the week for sure, and I recommend this to anybody to read because it's very short and you can fly through it in a couple hours. Okay, and that is my week. Like I said, it was mostly just sort of a bummer week. I had 3 books that I didn't really like out of the 5 I read, but Interview with the Vampire was good, XUS Classic, and Carmilla, one of my favorite novellas that I've ever read. So, awesome stuff. I'm super satisfied with my start to Vampire October, and I hope it only gets better from here. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books, or if you do plan on reading any of these books, or your thoughts, just in general, or what you're reading this month, even.